Welcome to the Stored in Congressional Bills study tutorial. In this video, I'm going to explain everything you need to know to do the task. But before that, I would like to take a minute to explain why we are interested in this. Why have we designed this system to help us sort congressional bills? As you know, each year there are thousands of bills introduced in US Congress, and it would be really nice if we could automatically forward each bill to the appropriate committee. So that is the motivation here. So please keep watching this video until the end, and I would like to say that if you don't watch this video until the end, you will not be allowed to do the task. So let's start with the basics of the system. So this is what the system looks like. These are some of the bills that were introduced in 2012. Now, how are we going to sort these bills? We are going to sort them by assigning appropriate labels to these bills that would explain their content. But we won't have to assign labels to all of these bills, but to some of them. And then after we assign labels to some of the bills, we will have this system that automatically assigns labels to other bills. So our job is to assign good and appropriate labels to some of these bills. So how can we study the bills? If we click on each one of these, then a window will open up, and this is going to be the content of the bill. So we are going to study this bill and decide if we want to assign a new label to this bill, or if we want to use existing label, or if we have no idea what's going on in this bill, we will just skip it and let the automatic labeler decide on the label of this. So it looks like this is talking about education. So we will create a new label by typing the education in this box and apply that to this document. Then we are going to move to the next document. We will study this bill, and if we feel like we don't have any idea about what's going on here, we will just skip this document. Then we can choose other bills, study the bills, and we will create a new label and apply that to this bill. So as you see, every time you create a new label, that label will appear here. Every label will have its own color, and based on the labels that we assign to each bill, the color of that bill name will also change. The last document that you add a label to will be highlighted in yellow to help you keep track of the bills that you have labeled. Now at each point we can go ahead and click on this button, automatically generate labels, to let the system automatically assign labels to some other bills. Now after automatic labels have been generated, we can see that some of the documents change the color. That means that these documents have been auto-labeled. And those that have gray background color, that means that they are labeled with the automatic labeler and have not been approved with us manually yet. So for example, if I click on this document, we will see that this document has been auto-labeled with crime and violence, and then the confidence level is 74%. So the automatic labeler thinks that this document should be labeled with crime and violence with 74% of probability. So now what we can do is that we can either approve this label or create a new label and assign that to this document if we think that this label doesn't explain the label of this, doesn't explain this document. Or we can choose an existing label and change the label of this bill to that. Now after we study this bill, we find that this crime and violence doesn't explain this really well, and we want to create a new label and apply that to this document. Now every document that has been auto-labeled and you have not approved the label for it, the label for it might change when you keep running the automatic labeler. But when you approve a label or a label to a document, or you create a label and assign that label to the bill manually, that label will not change. Now after you add 10 labels to the document, then The automatic labeler will automatically run in the background and assign new automatic labels to the document. And then a pop-up will appear. Now the pop-up mentions that the new automatic labels will be assigned shortly, and it also mentions that new suggested documents are available. So these are the documents that the system thinks you should label, and these documents might not appear in the list that we see here. So if we click on OK, the automatic labeler will run and the suggested documents will load. Now, these are some of the suggested documents. This is one of them. We can study this document and act like before. We can either add a label from the existing labels or create a new label and assign that, or just skip the document. So for example, I will go ahead and create a new label, apply this to this document, and then I can click next to load the next suggested documents. And then I can keep doing this, and by clicking on previous and next, I can navigate through all the suggested documents. Anytime that I want to go back to the original view and continue labeling the existing documents here, I can just close this window and continue labeling documents in this view. At any point, I can also manually click on Suggest Doc button to show the suggested documents and label the suggested documents. Now, there are some other things that we can do with the system. For example, whenever I look at the labels and feel like I don't want to have a label called crime and violence, I just want to have a label called crime. I can choose this label, click on rename label, and change the label to crime. Now what will happen is that any document that you've labeled with crime and violence will now have the label crime. Or if I decide that I don't want the label employment anymore, I can choose this label and click on delete label. What will happen is that any document that was labeled with employment will no longer have a label. Next thing that we can do is that we can click on a label to see all the documents that are labeled with that. So these are all the documents that have labeled crime. Now we can go ahead and act like before. We can change the label of each document if we decide that crime doesn't explain that document very well. Or if the document has been auto-labeled, we can approve the label for it or change the label like before. And we can navigate through all the documents by clicking all the documents with the same label by clicking on Show Next 10 or Show Previous 10. And once again, if we want to go back to the original view and keep labeling the documents here, we can click on Close. It's up to you how many documents you want to label, and it's up to you how many labels you want to create. Just keep in mind that what makes sense for you is to have 20 or 30 labels. If you have too many or too few labels, that will make the assigned labels to the documents inappropriate. You can stop labeling documents once you are satisfied with all the assigned labels to the documents. Once you are done, don't forget to click on Finish and Submit all labels. And then after that, you can go ahead and take the survey, which will be handed to you. The magic word that you will need to know to be able to do the study is 8729. Don't forget that you will have a total of 40 minutes to do the task. Thanks for your attention, and we will see you during the study session.